Hello, everybody. Welcome to Module 3 of Law Enforcement Agencies. Today, we're going to discuss 3 objectives. 1, identify chapters 4, 5, and 6, as well as other resources. Anytime you see an icon that looks like that, it means I will be putting an item in the course announcements. Second item, we will discuss Module 3, Community Presentation Outline Assignment. And the third item is to introduce the Module 3 Live Classroom Question. Let's go to the readings and resources. Readings and resources. Course designer asks you to read chapters 4 and 6. I looked at the chapters. I also recommend that you read chapter 5. So chapter 4, 5, and 6 all deal with policing. I will put an outline of all 3 chapters in a course announcement. Resources. What does a good outline look like? FAQ. This is the document provided by Rasmussen Online Library. Other resources that you might find helpful include a self-assessment checklist, a template outline, and a video, which will all be available to you in the course announcements. Keep in mind, anytime you see an icon like that, you know the item is available for you in the course announcements. Rasmussen University outline. What does a good outline look like? What does a full sentence outline look like? How do you create one? For this assignment, you should complete one of the following 2 outlines. Outline with main ideas, subtopics, subdivisions, and details, or a full sentence outline. This is the most common type of outline. It's called an alphanumeric outline. This is a screen capture of an alphanumeric outline. Another screen capture. I only captured the first part of it, but you can see the second part, and it would look similar to the first part. Full sentence outline, information. If you're going to do a full sentence outline, I encourage you to read these items. Example. A self-assessment checklist for Module 3. I've provided an outline for you in course announcements. Tips for addressing Module 3. You see the items that will be contained in that handout that you will find in a course announcement. A template outline provided by Rasmussen. It's just the first page of it. My computer is very sensitive. Let me get to the right place. That's the first page. Quick overview of what it looks like. And some red font. The template contains text. That text should be removed, and you should put your text in place of it. Also, you'll see that Rasmussen has provided links to other resources that you might like to use. And then they also offer a video, how to use the outline view. This video is based on Microsoft 365. If you have any problems completing your outline, you don't know where to start, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you get started. All right, our instructions. What are we supposed to accomplish? I encourage you to read the competency, scenario, the instructions, and the assessment. While you're looking at this page, please pay attention to the fact that you will create one of the following types of outlines. Just one, but choose either outline with main ideas, etc., or the full sentence outline.
Today,
Let's
we're diving
listen.
into a task that's both exciting and vital for community engagement. As a law enforcement officer for your local police department, you've been asked to give a presentation to the community. Your mission? Explain the historical development of law enforcement and educate the community about the different law enforcement levels: local, state, and federal. Your chief of police wants an outline for your community presentation. You're the expert, and it's your chance to shine. Let's start with the historical development of law enforcement. Begin your presentation by taking the community on a journey through time. Highlight key milestones in the historical development of law enforcement. This could include the evolution of policing strategies, the establishment of formal police departments, and significant moments that shaped law enforcement's role in society. Now, let's tackle the different law enforcement levels: local, state, and federal. Break it down for the community so they understand who's responsible for what and how these levels work together. As you create your outline, think about how to engage the community. Consider incorporating visuals, real-life examples, or even guest speakers to enhance the learning experience.
All right, now let's look at the grading rubric. I always encourage you to look at the criteria as well as the master column, because we want you to earn an A. History of law enforcement in the United States is worth 18 points. Thoroughly explores and explains the history of law enforcement in the U.S., providing a comprehensive understanding of key events and developments. Next, we'll look at the differences between local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. Accurately lists and explains differences between local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, demonstrating a deep understanding. And then we go down to them individually. First the local, then the state, and finally the federal. And finally, your professional language, which includes APA formatting. Some tips. Caution. I have some tips and requests for you. Number one, stop. Please don't use PDF files. Use either Word or RTF. Why? Because if you submit just a PDF file, I don't have an application that uses or opens PDF files. I have to search for one that's free, that's available online. Problem with that, I can only open so many free PDF files each day. If everybody submits a PDF file, it's going to delay my grading. So please, please, please do not use PDF files. Use Word or PDF. So hopefully stop you from using PDFs. I will deduct points if you give me a PDF file. So please, no PDF files. Originality, plagiarism. All right. I looked at module 2. OMG. Lot of copying and pasting. I understand why that happened. I did not deduct any points for plagiarism. However, this time I will. Anything over 20% will receive deduction in points. For every percent over 20%, you will lose 1% of your grade. Why? Because I want it to be more than copying and pasting. I want you to engage thinking. I want you to learn something. Yes, you may use these resources to get started. Yes, you may use AI. To use AI, always check your resources. Always include citations in the body of your paper and references at the end of your paper. Always use headings in your paper. Always adhere to APA 7th edition formatting rules. So when you read, do your research, engaging critical thinking, paraphrase, and cite sources. Cite them. Citations go in the body of the paper and references go at the end of your paper. For every reference you include, you should have at least one citation that matches that reference in the body of your paper. Do not include any references that you don't have citations in the body of your paper for. You might have many citations that refer to the same reference, which is fine, but you should have at least one reference that matches all those citations. You have any questions, please ask. Remember, paraphrase and cite and reference your source. All right. Now, first thing the person talked about was doing an history of police strategies. So here's an example of evolution of police strategies. By no means is this list all encompassing. It's just meant to help you get started. So you can see the dates and a brief event that happened. And what I did for the next several slides is I pulled some information together for you that refers back to some of these. Not all of them, but some of them. So let's get started. We'll start with Sir Robert Peel.
Sir Robert Peel, 1829. The goal is preventing crime, not catching criminals. If the police stop crime before it happens, we don't have to punish citizens or suppress their rights.
He has 9 principles, and you can see those on this slide. Also, look at number 7. Police are the public, and the public are the police. What does that mean? Right here. I'll give you a second to read this. Remember, you will be receiving a copy of this in a course announcement. The next period we're going to look at is the political era.
The political era, 1840s to 1930s. In this early period, American police departments were organized at the municipal level and deeply integrated with local political machines. The police were less independent from local politics than they are today. Political ties shaped hiring and deployment.
A reform professional era.
The reform professional era of policing, spanning roughly from 1920 to 1970, marked a period of deliberate efforts to modernize American law enforcement by severing its ties to corrupt local politicians. Instead of focusing on community relations, this era emphasized a reactive, crime-fighting approach that sought to use technology and scientific methods to increase police efficiency.
Community policing.
Community policing in America, from the 1970s to the present, emerged from social unrest and racial tensions, shifting the focus from reactive crime fighting to proactive partnerships between police and communities. Key developments include assigning officers to specific neighborhoods, increased foot patrols, collaborations with community organizations, and the federal government establishing the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services in 1994 to provide support. The practice has evolved over time, becoming a central part of modern policing, but critics point out that its implementation has sometimes disproportionately affected poor communities and communities of color.
One thing you're going to continue to observe while we go through these, it has pros and cons. Let's look at problem-oriented policing.
Problem-oriented policing is a policing strategy that focuses on identifying and addressing the underlying causes of crime and disorder, rather than just reacting to individual incidents. It uses a proactive, data-driven approach, often employing the SARA model, scanning, analysis, response, and assessment, to develop and implement tailored solutions to specific community problems. This method can involve collaborating with community members and other agencies to achieve sustainable crime reduction and improve community well-being.
I'm Dr. Adam McKee, and today we're exploring the transformative approach of problem-oriented policing, POP, and its broader counterpart, community-oriented policing, COP. These strategies mark a significant shift from traditional, reactive policing methods to proactive, community-focused problem-solving. Join me as we delve into the origins, methodology, and effectiveness of POP, and how it reshapes the interaction between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Historically, policing in the United States predominantly involved reactive measures, responding to crimes after they occurred with arrests, citations, and routine patrols. However, the late 20th century witnessed a paradigm shift initiated by Herman Goldstein's seminal 1979 article, which introduced problem-oriented policing. This approach suggested that the primary role of police should not just be responding to crimes but actively identifying and solving community problems. Problem-oriented policing encourages a systematic process to identify specific issues within a community that may lead to crime or reduce the quality of life. This method uses the problem analysis triangle, a tool that helps visualize the relationship between the victim, the location, and the offender, to analyze and address the core issues that contribute to crime. Research has shown that focusing on a small percentage of factors, such as certain offenders, victims, or locations, can significantly impact overall crime rates. Studies like those by Spellman and Eck have demonstrated that a targeted approach in areas with high crime rates can optimize the use of limited resources more effectively than traditional methods. This strategy has proven successful in reducing crime and enhancing community safety across various jurisdictions. Implementing POP requires a shift in police culture from a primarily enforcement-focused role to one that includes being facilitators of community well-being. This change challenges officers to engage more deeply with community members, understand the complex dynamics of their environments, and develop tailored responses to unique issues. COP expands on the principles of POP by fostering an even stronger collaboration between police and community members. It emphasizes building trust and mutual respect, which are crucial for the successful implementation of community-driven problem-solving strategies. Together, POP and COP aim to not only address crime but also improve the overall quality of life for community members. Throughout the U.S., numerous police departments have adopted POP strategies with significant success. For example,
Specific interventions designed to target hotspots or repeat offenders have led to noticeable reductions in crime and disorder. Programs designed to aid those who cannot care for themselves, like the intoxicated or mentally ill, have not only helped reduce crime but also provided much-needed services to vulnerable populations. Problem-oriented policing represents a crucial evolution in the approach to law enforcement. By focusing on the root causes of issues rather than just their symptoms, police can more effectively serve and protect communities. As we continue to refine these strategies, it is vital for law enforcement agencies to maintain open, constructive dialogues with the communities they serve to ensure these methods meet the needs and respect the rights of all citizens.
We're going through these. You should see some common threads coming through. The strategies may differ, but they still have certain values in mind. Community representation, community sense of belonging, community sharing. It's usually a community member that brings the crime to the attention of the police. We have more eyes on the prize than we do have police officers. The police need our support. Some more information about problem-oriented policing. Now, this is a video, but I'm not going to play it here. But if you're interested, you will find it in our course announcements.
Hotspots policing is a place-based strategy that focuses police resources on small, high-crime areas to reduce crime and disorder. It is based on the principle that a disproportionate amount of crime occurs in a small number of locations, and that targeting these specific places can be more efficient than a broad approach. Strategies include increasing visible patrols, using problem-oriented policing, and engaging the community at these specific locations.
When you look at the map, areas with more crime are indicated by the warmer colors. So you have some brighter colors than you do other areas. These are called the hot spots or target areas. The next is CompStat.
CompStat and Performance Management, 1990s. CompStat popularized routine crime analysis and strategic deployment, influence agencies nationwide. CompStat's pros include improved crime reduction through data-driven, proactive strategies and increased police accountability. Its cons are the potential for falsified crime data under pressure, inequitable resource allocation if communities lack resources, and a potential for overemphasis on statistics at the expense of dynamic problem-solving.
More CompStat.
Whether working murder cases or pursuing assault complaints, police officers have jobs to do, and both of those police jobs and a variety of types of enforcement in between are all cataloged here. CompStat is a listing of crime data available to the public. It stands for Comparative or Computerized Statistics, CompStat. It was begun in 1994 to help reform the NYPD by making commanders more accountable for crime fighting in their precincts.
Get off our necks! I can't breathe!
But as protests against police increase, there's been a call to eliminate CompStat. But that call is not necessarily coming from protesters. It's come from the head of the union representing police captains and higher-ranking brass. Keeping such stats promotes tension between police and the communities they serve, the union chief argues, and it causes tension between precinct commanders and the very top brass because CompStat numbers can be manipulated.
Burglary at the home, and that's a felony, and then we've seen instances where that's been what they call downgraded to a lesser crime, to a misdemeanor like lost property.
That's John Jay College professor Eli Silverman, who's not only written the book on CompStat, he's written two. In them, he says CompStat numbers can be massaged to make crime look worse than it is or better.
That was why stop and frisk became discriminatory as it was practiced, because it was just done to get numbers.
He says while CompStat numbers can be and are misused, they don't have to be. Saying they're not misused, the person you see here from 4 years ago when he ran the division that oversaw CompStat. Dermot Shea is now, of course, running the entire department as commissioner. He told Pix 11 News recently off camera, "There is an assumption that I disagree with, that CompStat is directing activity. That is the furthest from the truth. It was never about summonses and arrests for the sake of numbers. It's about improving the quality of life. So there is no plan to cancel CompStat," the commissioner says, "but it can be used to improve the city by focusing on things other than enforcement."
You can measure the community relations. When you reported a crime, was it taken? Did you see follow-up? Was there any follow-up? Did anyone get back to you?
He says those are some of the CompStat metrics looked at in other countries where he does work, including Great Britain. He says the CompStat that focuses more on protection and less on enforcement is more effective. Outside police headquarters in Lower Manhattan, I'm James Ford, Pix 11 News.
As we all know, you can lie with statistics. You can make look things worse than they are or better than what they are. How many times have you listened to the news? How many times have you heard that crime's going down? How many times have you heard about crime stories? This crime happened, that crime happened. That seems to happen daily. But then you hear crime's going down. So what do you believe? Who do you believe? Another strategy, broken windows theory.
Imagine you're walking through a neighborhood. On one side of the street, there's a house with neat flower beds, a freshly painted fence, and not a single piece of trash in sight. Across the street, there's another house with a broken window, graffiti on the walls, and overgrown weeds. Which side makes you feel safer? Which side makes you think twice about walking alone at night? This simple idea of how our surroundings shape our behavior is at the heart of the broken windows theory, a concept that has sparked debates in criminology, psychology, and policing for decades. Developed by social scientists James Q. Wilson and George L. Kelling in the early 1980s, the theory suggests that visible signs of disorder and neglect, like that single broken window, aren't just symptoms of a problem. They might be the problem itself. According to the theory, once we see a neighborhood that looks like no one cares, it's easier for us to believe that anything goes. The story of the broken windows theory actually starts back in 1969 with a bold experiment by psychologist Philip Zimbardo, who you might know from his infamous Stanford prison experiment. But before he got into studying prisons, Zimbardo wanted to understand how the environment affects our behavior when it comes to crime and vandalism. He parked two cars in different neighborhoods, one in the rough and tumble streets of the South Bronx in New York City, and the other in the quiet, upscale community of Palo Alto, California. The car in the Bronx didn't stand a chance. It was stripped and vandalized within hours. Meanwhile, the car in Palo Alto sat there untouched for a week, a lonely but intact testament to the neighborhood's sense of order. Then Zimbardo did something curious. He smashed a window on the car in Palo Alto himself. Almost instantly, that quiet, safe neighborhood changed. People who might never have thought about vandalizing before began to take part in the destruction. His conclusion? Disorder invites chaos. When people see signs that nobody cares, they stop caring too. Wilson and Kelling picked up on Zimbardo's findings and took them further. In their famous 1982 article, Broken Windows, the Police and Neighborhood Safety, they argued that crime is like a chain reaction. If one window gets broken and isn't fixed, the message sent out is that nobody's in charge and anything goes, so that one act of vandalism can snowball into bigger problems like drug dealing, assaults, and worse. The key idea here was simple but powerful. If we crack down on the little things, graffiti, littering, public drinking, we might just stop the bigger crimes from happening at all. It was a call for a different kind of policing, one that focused on maintaining order before the chaos took over. Fast forward to the 1990s, when New York City was struggling with high crime rates. Enter Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Police Commissioner William Bratton, who embraced the broken windows approach with open arms. They launched a crackdown on minor offences like subway fare evasion, public urination and graffiti. Their goal? To send a clear signal that no crime was too small to matter. And at first it seemed to work. Crime rates in New York City dropped dramatically, and the city started to feel safer. People credited the broken window strategy for turning things around, and it became a policing philosophy adopted by cities around the world. But, as with many things in life, the story wasn't so black and white. Critics pointed out that crime rates were falling all over the United States during the same period, even in places that didn't use the broken windows approach. Some argued that other factors like economic growth or demographic changes played a bigger role in reducing crime. Even more troubling, research started to show that focusing on minor crimes led to a rise in aggressive policing tactics that disproportionately targeted marginalized communities. The critics claimed that while the streets might have looked cleaner, the human cost of this approach was too high. Racial profiling, mass incarceration, and a growing distrust between police and communities became part of the legacy of broken windows policing. So does the broken windows theory still hold up? Today, the debate continues. Some studies suggest that while fixing broken windows and addressing minor disorders might make people feel safer, it doesn't necessarily prevent serious crimes from happening. In other words, it's not just about sweeping the streets clean, it's about understanding the deeper social issues that lead to crime in the first place. The broken windows theory has shaped policing policies for decades, but its legacy is a mixed one. While it has led to increased attention on maintaining urban order, it has also faced criticism for its role in promoting aggressive policing tactics that disproportionately impact vulnerable communities. Understanding the broader social dynamics that influence crime is essential for developing more equitable and effective approaches to public safety.
So think about your community. What does it do? Does it believe in the broken window theory? What happens when you see graffiti in your community? Do you leave it or do you clean it up? What about broken windows? Let's move to intelligence-led policing.
Intelligence-led policing is a strategic law enforcement framework that uses data analysis and intelligence to proactively prevent, disrupt, and reduce crime by making more informed decisions about where and how to deploy resources. It shifts focus from simply reacting to incidents to anticipating criminal activity by identifying patterns, high-risk offenders, and crime hotspots, though critics raise concerns about potential for overreach and civil liberties.
On this slide, you can see how it works, purpose and goals, and the benefits and concerns. Yes, each strategy has its pros and its cons. We must capitalize on the pros and minimize the cons. Let's look at body-worn cameras. This part does not have any sound.
Body-worn cameras are widely used by state and local law enforcement agencies in the United States. They are worn principally by officers in the performance of duties that require open and direct contact with the public. Despite their widespread and growing adoption, the current evidence regarding the effectiveness of body-worn cameras is mixed. Some studies suggest that body-worn cameras may offer benefits, while others show either no impact or possible negative effects. The mixed results of these studies strongly imply that additional research is needed. In particular, more studies employing randomized control trials are needed.
More about evidence-based policing.
Evidence-based policing is an approach that uses scientific research and data analysis to guide police decisions, policies, and practices, rather than relying solely on tradition or intuition. By evaluating what works through scientific methods, evidence-based policing aims to ensure that police resources are used effectively to improve crime prevention and public service. This involves creating, reviewing, and applying the best available evidence to shape the most effective and efficient strategies.
You've probably heard of evidence-based policing. It is becoming increasingly ingrained in UK police forces, and quite frankly, it's about time. When we say evidence in this context, we are not talking about forensic evidence, such as DNA or fingerprints. We are talking about something that has been proven to be true. So, if you're making your decisions in an evidence-based way, that simply means you are making your decisions based on what has been shown to work or what has been shown not to work. This is a much better decision-making process than just going with what you've always been doing or going with your gut. Although individual professional experience does have its place and can be very valuable, it might be biased and tainted by opinions and other external factors that make it unreliable. On the other hand, if you base your decisions on a solid evidence base, that simply means you use information on what has been tested and scientifically shown to work or not to work through methodological research. We've been taking it for granted that medicine is evidence-based, in that we would not accept a medical procedure or medication unless it had been tried and tested before. Evidence-based policing still lags behind the field of medicine, but there has been great progress. Cambridge criminologist Lawrence Sherman first coined the term evidence-based policing in 1998. At the time, he was still working with the US police force. He also defined the process of targeting, testing, and tracking, which describes how any practice or process should be taken through an evaluation to form part of the evidence base. The evidence base is simply the accumulation of what we know. There are two ways of using the evidence base. When you consult the evidence base to make a decision, you can do so by speaking to people about their experience and learning of using a certain process, by reading research on the topic, or by looking it up on the internet, for example. The second way of using the evidence base is to contribute to it. When you have tried and tested something, such as a way of doing things or some technique or a piece of equipment, you should ideally publish that in some way, so that others can benefit from your learning. There are police networks online and various groups in which investigative practitioners can do so. Even if you found that something does not work, that could be really valuable for someone else to know, if perhaps they were considering using what you've tried. Ideally, this testing of the process should take place in a way that is methodologically sound and should really test the actual process in question without too many other variables that could influence the result. For example, if a police force is trialing a new way of dealing with encountering members of the public in the street, you can't really measure the impact of this unless all officers who are meant to be using this new technique are actually using it properly and consistently. That is why we set up experiments, which are tests and evaluations of processes, but in a controlled way. If you implement the testing process properly and test it properly, and you then find that it has produced different results to the business as usual process, you should be able to say that the difference in outcomes is probably due to the differences in process, and not other random factors. The whole point of research is to exclude those other factors so that we can safely assume it really is the change in process that has caused the change in results. If we can't say that, we simply cannot state whether the new process has any impact or not. I'll let some other people define evidence-based policing for you.
Evidence-based policing is a strategy for making a decision. It's a way of deciding exactly what the problem is based on some idea of where this problem is likely to be heading, just like when a doctor takes various measurements to find out what kind of illness a patient has. A police officer can go to a domestic and try to figure out how dangerous this situation is. And the problem that we have in doing that just based on experience is twofold. First, most police don't know what's going to happen with the couple they're dealing with right now over the next 6 months or 6 years. They can't know that because they normally don't have any kind of follow-up experience. And the second problem is that they can never have enough contact with people to cover the tens of thousands of cases that a police department or even a police district can have in the course of a year. So when doctors are trained in medical school to classify diseases, they have a basis for that classification in research on hundreds of thousands of cases. With police, we now have a study in Kent, England, with 371,000 cases of domestic violence that has produced totally new insights onto how you can classify the cases that you're dealing with. And you are able then to consult the police data systems in a way that would allow you to make a much better decision about whether this case could be a murder tonight, or in the vast majority of cases, the police will never see this couple again.
In the police service, we have thousands of rules on how you get evidence that you put before a court. You can only do it in certain ways. You have to know that the evidence is really good. You've got to test it. And that testimony is really important. And we understand the rationale for that. But when we are engaging in certain tactics or we have an idea, the level of evidence we require to start that idea or that tactic is non-existent. So someone just has a bright idea and they say, we're going to do this from this point on. And if we use examples of bright ideas that have gone wrong because they haven't been based on evidence, then that sometimes tells the story. So the famous one is of Scared Straight, where police officers naturally think, well, what we need to do is get naughty kids, send them to a prison, get them to meet inmates, and they'll be so scared that they won't commit crime anymore, antisocial behavior. And in fact, when they took an evidence-based approach, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute, it showed that the kids became worse as a result of that. Similarly, taking drugs into school and talking kids through drugs has shown to be at best ineffective and sometimes more harmful. So an evidence-based approach means we analyze whether the tactics we're engaging in are really effective or not. And it goes beyond where policing normally is, which is there's a problem, we engage in a tactic, and then we see if there's a problem after that. The sort of before and after approach that has plagued policing. And I equate it to this little story, really. You know, I've been a senior leader in policing, but I've been a PC as well, and I've seen senior leaders stand up and say, you know, since I've taken over this command, burglary has gone down 20%. And what that leader is saying is, because of my great leadership, burglary's gone down 20%. And as a constable, I know that's not down to your great leadership. But when crime goes up 20%, the same leader doesn't go in front of his staff or her staff and say, burglary's gone up and I'm sorry, it's because I'm a really rubbish police officer and I don't know how to lead you. They start saying, you know, it's because sentences are too short, it's because there's issues with the economy, no one can get a job, bad parenting, all these, you know, socioeconomic factors. And the truth is, as a leader, you can't have it both ways. So we have to be evidence-based. And that means adopting research methods that will tell us whether we are being effective or not, or research methods to understand what the real problem is. And it's saying, what is the best way of trying to answer the question you're posing as a police officer? So if it is, how do we get burglary down? How do we get robbery down? How do we get violence down? It's not saying, I know the idea. It's saying, well, I have an idea and I'm going to test it to see whether that's effective. I think that's a very long-winded way, but probably a necessarily long-winded way of speaking through what evidence-based policing is.
I would say evidence-based policing is about evidence-informed practice. It's about practice, in this case by police, that's informed and guided by an evidence base, hopefully a robust evidence base, but which also relies on the professional.
Okay, I'm going to stop the video here. It will be available in the course announcement. But if you're thinking of going for an advanced degree, such as a master's, or if you want to do research in your field, perhaps you should base it on evidence-based research. Another area you might want to look at is a brief history of law enforcement. I found this site that you might like. The link will be available in the course announcement. Important dates to remember. A history of the American police officer. This site offers several different dates that might help you complete your assignment. This is another interesting video. I'll play just the first few minutes of it.
I think there's a lot of people who say, yeah, I know the police are broken. Let's just enact the reforms that will fix it. But the question for me is, if the police are broken, when did they break? What year in American history did the police break? It seems really trite to...
Okay, I'll stop that here and I'll put the video in a course announcement. History of law enforcement. Remember, we're supposed to be looking at the local, state, and federal police officers. So on this slide, you'll find some tips for looking at the local. On the next slide, you'll see the state. And on the next slide, you'll see tips for federal. What's your job looking like? There's some fairly current statistics for you. You can see there's definitely a demand for your job, your salary. And for some reason, when I tried to get this video to work, it was not working. But I encourage you to go out to Bureau of Labor and explore this site. Your live classroom question. Some have already started answering it. And this concludes our presentation. Go into the course announcement, you'll find a video to this and handouts. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for watching.